welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be making the Canterbury Polo. I'm really excited about this pattern. This is my newest pattern and I'm going to take you through key steps. It's pretty simple to put together. As you can see here, I've cut out all my pattern pieces and I'm going to take you through how I mark everything up. Now, one of the most important pieces is the placket to mark out. So we're going to put all of those over there and take out the pins. And then I'm going to take you through how I mark this up. Now, I've already interfaced this, as you can see here. So don't forget to interface that. There's only one piece for the placket. And I'm going to mark up on the side that is interfaced. And all I do here is I just move the pattern piece slightly. And I just mark the notches, and then I mark the center line and these dotted lines here. Now, the cut line is the solid line down the middle, and the stitch line are the dotted lines that you see here. Now, to keep things even, this is what I like to do. And it's your choice how you like to mark things up, but I like to stick a pin through the end spots here. Just like that, like so, and then I place the pattern piece even again, and I just put a little dot where those were, and you can see it's transferred here. Then I grab my trusty ruler and I just mark it like so and match it up. Now this marker is a ultra washable marker. That's what I like to use to do my markups. But there you go, you can see that it's marked now. And so the cut line is here, stitch line here and here. There you go. And now I'm going to go ahead and just mark all the other relevant notches for the pattern. Okay, we're going to slow it down to pay attention to this pocket marking now. So you can see I have my notches for my size right here and right here. Now I like to use the same method that I use for marking the placket, and I stick a pin through the middle, right there, and through the middle here. Now, it's up to you where you would like to place your pocket, whether you like it on your right side or your left side. Industry standard is on the wearer's left. So if you open up your piece like so, that will be this side right here. So you can see that the pattern piece is like this. So what I like to do is I just like to mark it so I can see it on the other side. There they are. Match up my pattern piece like so, and boom, boom, there we go. So you can see my mark is there, and my other mark is here. Now, because my fabric goes between light and dark background, I have both my marking tools out, my ultra washable marker and my tailor's chalk. So I'm just gonna find that one there because it's on the dark background and stick it with the tailor's chalk. And there you go, my pocket is marked. But once again, you can either choose to put a pocket here and a pocket here, pocket on this side. It's whatever your preference is. And I personally like it on this side, but for industry standard, I'm going to show you that it is on this side. Now that we have everything marked up, I'm going to grab my back bodice piece and my front bodice piece. Just put those pattern pieces aside, and we are going to stay stitch the neckline. So right here, and then right, oh, if I can open it up, and right here. The reason being is whenever you're doing a collar or you're doing a placket, there is a lot of tugging that is involved, and you want to make sure that your neckline doesn't lose shape and go out of proportion. So let's go do that. Back from the machine, and you can see here, it's just a simple stitch with your longest stitch length. Show you on the wrong side so you can see that better. So that way it will hold up between tugging and all the manipulation that we're going to do when we're doing the placket. Now what we're going to do, we're just going to set aside our back piece and we're going to work on the placket. Now before we go and attach the placket to the front bodice, the first thing we need to do is do some pressing. So what we're going to do is you're going to press in these long edges here only, not the short, the long, these ones here. And you're going to press it in 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. And you're going to put your wrong sides together. So it's going to go down like this. You're going to press that side and then you're going to press this side. Let me go do that with the iron and I'll be right back. I'm back from the iron and you can see here, that's just nicely pressed on each side. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go to the wrong side of your front placket and you want to make sure this is your right side. I'm going to check my notches here. That looks like I've just got 1 notch on each. So this is my front panel. If you ever forget like me, always check your notch markings on your sleeve. That's how I always find it. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to line up where we marked the center front with the center of the placket like so. And then you're going to pin down the center. Okay, and once you've done that, then you're going to take it to the machine and you're going to stitch the stitch lines. So that was the outer lines that were dotted on our pattern piece. Let me see if I can find my pattern piece. Oh, here it is. So these lines right here, just all the way around, we're going to stitch that. Now that we've stitched down according to the stitch line markings, we can remove the pins down the center, which is our cut line. So you're going to grab your scissors. I know this part is a little nerve-wracking, but I promise it is going to be okay. Before you cut in though, just make sure you have done the right side of your placket to the wrong side of your front bodice, okay? Double check that beforehand. Now we're going to cut. So you're going to cut down the center through all layers, following that line there. And then we're going to snip into the corners, taking care not to go through stitches. Go. And then we're going to trim down the seam allowance. So you can see here I've gone through all layers. I'm going to trim it down to about 1/4 of an inch, which is about 0.5 centimeters. I'm guesstimating here. You'll obviously be much more pedantic about this part than I am here. So just gonna go like that. And then this bottom part as well. Oopsies. Just gonna go like that. Okay. Let me put this right way up. Now, there you go. Okay, so you can see we have a big old hole in the middle of our chest now. Now the next part is to pull it through. So what you're going to do is you're just going to turn this over and you're going to pull this to the right side. Like so. See? There we go. Now it's optional. You can press here if you would like. Whatever you find works better. I've gone ahead and given this a little bit of a press just so you guys can see clearly what the next step is. So first we're going to start with this side of the placket, and what you're going to do is you're going to bring this folded edge that we pressed previously and you're going to bring it to this stitch line right here. Can you see that? So that's where we stitched just before we turn this to the right side, and you're going to bring that folded edge to cover that stitch line like so, and you're going to stitch that down, edge stitch it right here, but you're going to stop 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch before you hit where we snipped in here. So you can see that right there. See right there? You're going to stop just above it right there. So let's go do that. Okay, I apologize in advance, but I filmed those other steps on time lapse. So I'm going to explain to you now what I've done. Now I edge stitched this part here, and then I repeated the same process with this other side, and that's looking good. Then you pull them over on top of each other and you end up with your pretty placket. However, you do end up with a lot of excess here, a lot of bulk. So what I did was, this is where this was. It was in here like so. And I went in and I cut that excess out, making sure not to cut anything on this front placket. Strictly the bottom placket is the one that you've cut the excess out of. Now what you're going to do is you're going to fold that back over and you're going to fold this upwards like so. So it's encasing all the raw edges in there. And what you're going to do is you're going to take particular care here. See how this placket is here? You want to make sure that hasn't moved and that is still going to be here, right? Like that. And you can leave this a little bit longer if you don't trust yourself to catch it. And so you want to make sure that's in, because see how nice and pretty that is from the inside? You want to keep that like so. And then this part is folded up and it will be encasing over that. So let me pin that so you can see better. Okay, so we're going to make sure that's all like that. That's like that. See that? Then that goes over it. Then this tucks in like so. And then you're going to pin that down. Okay, like that. And then taking particular care, because you can see here, once this bottom placket wants to come out, right? Take particular care when you're sewing it at the machine. And you're going to start from where we left off here on the edge stitching. You're going to go all the way around, catching over here, and then you're going to go up to match that edge stitch there and then sew across. And that way it will keep your placket in place. And if you would like to make it a little bit more stable, go ahead and do a cross as well in that. I'll come back once I've done it. Okay, we've secured 2 of the edges down now. I've pivoted and you can see here, if I raise that, you can see those little raw edges in there. Yep, we're going to tuck those in nicely. I'm going to stitch down here and then I'm going to stop right where my edge stitching started before, and then I'm going to do a line across there. And then once I do that, because I want to stabilize it, I'm going to do a line across diagonally and another one there so that I can secure it, and I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Alright, here's the finished product, so you can see that I've just gone all the way around and done a square. And then if we open it up, we've secured the bottom placket, and then we go further in and we've caught back here as well. So everything is all secure and we're ready for the next step. Now that we've finished our placket, it is time for us to put our pocket in. Now I have gone and grabbed the pocket piece and I've serged down each edge here, leaving the top unserged. Next, we're going to press in the sides and press in the top according to the instructions, and then I'll come back once I've done that. Okay, I've given it a quick press, and you can see here I've pressed in the sides that we serged by 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch, and then the top part, what I did was I pressed in 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch, and then another 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters down. Now what you're going to do is you're going to edge stitch across here to keep that in place, and then once you've done that, you will match up your pocket like so to your notches that you had marked earlier, and then you're going to sew all the way around, edge stitch all the way around your pocket, and that will put it in place. Let's have a look at our finished pocket. Here you go. You can see that the top is open, and we've stitched all the way around on the other sides. I like to go in and do 2 lines of stitching. I find that really secure, but it's up to you what you think will fit best with your fabric and what style of pocket you want to go with. Now that we've done that, we can move on to the next part. Now before we get started on the collar, we need to grab our back bodice piece here, and we need to match that right sides together with the front bodice piece. We're going to pin here like so, and then we're going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to pin, and then we're going to stitch at 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then we're going to finish those seams and press towards the back. I'll be back once I've done that. Back from the sewing machine, and you can see here now we've stitched and serged. You can finish however way you prefer, and we've done that on both sides and press it towards the back. So we're going to flip it right side out now as we prepare for the collar. So we'll have that. It should be looking like this. Now we're going to grab the collar pieces. Make sure that your markings are still there from your notches. This notch here is representative of the shoulder seam, so that will match up with the shoulder seam. And then I actually just realized I forgot to mark the center. So I'm going to do that quickly right now. There we go. All right, so now we can put that to the side. And what we're going to do is we're just going to match right sides together. We're going to pin along the edges here, leaving the bottom open. And we're going to sew that with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, back from the ironing board, and you can see here I've given it a good press and it's looking good. Now it's up to you. I like to do this. You can top stitch all the way around here just to keep it held in place. I really like how that stabilizes my collar. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to attach it. Now that I've top stitched that, I'm going to attach it to my collar. My bodice. Before I do that, I'm just going to go in again because I can see where my chalk markings were, but they are disappearing on me slowly. So let's add that back in. Now what we're going to do, we're going to match the interface side of our collar, so this part right here, to the bodice pieces. I'm going to start here in the center. I'm going to pin that here. And then I'm going to pin the notches at the side seam, making sure that your seam allowance here is facing towards the back. I really don't like when that happens, when it decides to go the other way. There we go. Going to do the same for the other side. Just find that seam allowance. Make sure it's facing towards the back. Pin that in there. Okay. And then the other notches that we're matching up are at the front. So you're going to notice here, if you just tap your placket open, you're going to see the marking that we did right there. See that marking? That is the notch that you are matching up to the front of your collar. So I'm going to match that up like that. And there you go. There it is. And pin that in place. Okay. And that notch is the middle of your finished placket. Okay. I'm going to do the same for the other side. So I'm going to find that. There it is. Right there. Going to line up that edge. See that edge right there with the notch? Like so. Pin that in place. Now, there may be a little stretching that has gone on. Don't stress. And I'm talking stretching with the collar piece. Don't stress. You're going to ease that in when you're at the sewing machine. And then we're going to baste that in place and come back to finish the neckline with neckline bias. Okay, now that I have basted my collar to the bodice piece, it's looking like this, as you can see. And now we are ready to do the neckline bias finish. Now, before we get started on that, I want to talk about the bias. So let's put that to the side. Here is a bias that I have made myself. I like to make my own bias, and I find when I'm doing single fold, I like to do a measurement of 1 1/4 inches, or let's see, what is that? That is 3.1 centimeters. I find that's a really good finish. However, if you do not make your own bias, the pattern calls for a single fold 1/2 inch bias. So you can see that there. So the finished face of when you have it in your neckline will be 1/2 inch like that, right? But if you unfold it, you're going to see here that it is much smaller than the bias that I usually use. Okay? So now I'm going to show you what you do with the single fold bias when attaching it. So you're going to see here, we basted here at 3/8 of an inch, okay? Now, rather than taking your bias and matching up the raw edges like you would do normally, we are going to actually place that first fold. So when you unfold it, you're going to see that first fold there. And you're going to place that on top of your basting stitch. So it's not right at the edge, it's on your basting stitch. And then you're going to stitch on that fold. That is going to make sure that you don't have any difficulty when you go to turn it inwards to finish. And that way you'll be able to reduce bulk a little bit better, and it's going to sit nice and flush. Seeing as the only bias I have on hand, pre-made bias that I have on hand, is this charcoal color, which does not go with my garment, I'm not going to be using it for this tutorial. However, I am going to explain to you the only difference if you are using your own bias, which is with the first step, attaching the bias to the neckline. That is going to be the only difference between these two. If you're using your own bias and it is a thicker width, you can match that to the raw edge, okay? If you're using pre-made bias, you're going to take that fold, place it on the basting stitch, and then attach that way. That is going to be the only difference in the insertion of the bias, and the rest of the steps will be the same. First, we are going to attach this to the collar and the bodice. We are going to leave about 1.5 centimeters overhang on this side here as we pin. Let's do that. So So then you're going to take that to the machine and you're going to sew that with a seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. Again, to reiterate, if you are using pre-made bias, you are going to have that over the basting stitch underneath and you're going to stitch along that fold. Okay, back from the machine, you can see here that I have sewn that down. And you can see I've done it all the way to the edge of the placket and leaving that not stitched. Same on the other side, okay? Now we're going to trim the seam allowance down. You can do this in your chosen method. I like to just grab my pinking shears. Now that we've trimmed our seam allowance, we are going to push the bias up like so. We're going to give it a press and then we're going to understitch right here, right there. Back from the machine and you can see my understitching there. It's looking all nice and pretty. Now it's time for the magic to begin. What we're going to do is we're going to fold these edges in right here like that. See that? And we're going to repeat on the other side like so. Then you're going to fold your bias down into your top like so. And then you're going to grab that raw edge, which if you've used pre-made bias, you're going to have that other fold there. So that's already ready for you to fold up. But for this one that I made it myself, I'm going to have to fold it up myself like that. Okay? So make sure that end is in. The raw edge is folded up and in like that. You're going to give that a press and then you're going to stitch. And that way it's enclosing all your raw edges and it's going to look really pretty. Back from the machine, you can see my bias is all attached. Looks super neat. Added in a tag. Don't forget that if you would like to add in a tag. And you can see that it's all finished and polished. That placket's looking good. Okay, so now we can set that to the side and prepare our sleeves. Okay, let's start preparing our sleeves. Sleeves are really easy to go in. We are going to pre-press the hem first. So that is going to be the most important part. So let's put that to the side. We've already marked our notches at the beginning. Now what we're going to do, we are going to press the seam up by 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch, and then again by 1 centimeter, 3/8 of an inch. And then we're going to unfold it. It's just going to make it a lot easier when it comes time to actually hem the sleeve. We're going to do that on both sides. Okay, we're back from the ironing board. You can see here that I've pressed the sleeve hem, and that way it's going to make it a lot easier when it comes time to hem it. But as we are working on attaching the sleeve, we're going to work with this open. So you're going to unfold that even though we've pressed it. Okay, now it's time to attach the sleeve. We're going to grab our bodice back again. We're going to open up our bodice pieces like so. And then you're going to grab the sleeve that matches. So this is where it comes, it's very important to look at your notches. So I can see here, that's my double notch, which means it's the back. So that's not the correct sleeve. This is the correct sleeve. Okay. And you're going to be matching up in 5 spots. You're going to match up the center notch with the shoulder seam right there, the back notches right here, the front notches there, and then the side seam area like that. So let's go ahead and pin both sleeves to the bodice. Okay, now that we've pinned the right side of our sleeve to the right side of our bodice, we're going to go in and we're going to sew that with a seam allowance of 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. You're then going to finish in your chosen method, and then you're going to press your seam allowance towards your bodice. I've gone ahead and attached this sleeve. So you can see that there, and I finished it and pressed it towards the bodice. The next part now is actually doing the side seam. So let's grab that. And what we're going to do, if you have pressed your seam allowance towards your bodice, then you know that you've kept your seam allowance in the correct spot. So when you match it up there, they're both facing down. Okay, and then we'll just simply pin along this edge here, the side seam, and then all the way up the sleeve, making sure the pre-pressed edge that we pressed earlier is not folded over. And we're going to go all the way down there. We're going to stitch that once again with 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to finish it in our chosen method and then press towards the back. Okay, now that we've gone ahead and done the side seam, it's looking really nice there. We are going to finish up with the sleeve. So this is where it helps that we pre-pressed. So we can just follow those grooves that we already pressed. Super simple. Here we go. And we'll fold it again because we already pressed it. It makes it so much easier. There we go. So that looks really good. And then you're just going to edge stitch that in place. If you feel, if your fabric didn't hold the press very well, just go back to your iron and press it again and you'll be fine. So there we go. Now we're going to just edge stitch that, and our sleeve and side seam has been done. You're going to repeat those steps for the other sleeve, and then we'll be able to do finishing steps. We're almost there. Okay, we've made it to the last part. This is so exciting. So finishing steps is hemming. So I've pre-pressed mine just to check length on myself. I recommend doing the same for yourself. So we're going to hem right there, and then we are going to do our buttonholes and hand stitch our buttons on. Let me see where mine are so I can show you. Oh yes, it's gonna look so good. So you're gonna do that. I do include a button guide, so feel free to use that or try it on and check it out on yourself, whichever works for you. And then once you've done that, you have successfully completed your Canterbury Polo. Yay! Thanks for sewing with me.